Good.
You just have to be good enough. You don't have to be perfect. Good
Isn't
enough.
isn't that something to accept? To accept?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. It's I think it's very arrogant to expect ourselves to be perfect, but it's still hard.
Yeah,
I
that
think
energy is there.
yeah.
Yeah. Morning, Joe. So,
Good morning. Hello.
before other people come on, I have no idea of the sound settings, and I don't have the host link. So I want to see if you can hear the bell at all.
Go for it, Brad. Yeah. Don't hear a bell right now. No.
Hello, Sangha.
Hello.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Linda.
Morning, Brad.
Hi. Godo, welcome. Lisa, welcome. If anybody knows how to be host, please let me know, because this is all being recorded and I don't have an option to pause. So, like all of this initial stuff, I tried to go to the record and pause it, but it's recording automatically, and it won't let me pause it because it asked me to ask the host, but I have no idea who the host is. So I guess we're all the host. Or if you practice Zen, start working on the difference between host and guest, which is a koan. So, Derek, Amparo. Getting close to time, but let's give a few more. We'll just give another minute or two for people to sign on before we begin. Hi, Beth. Claudia. So, Claudia, I don't have host privileges, so I can't do anything with recording or anything like that, or make anyone else host. Are you automatically a host, or?
Not usually, but let me see.
Okay, so you were able to transcribe, so that's on, because I don't even have the ability to pause the recording. Do you have that ability?
No, I don't think so either.
All right.
I mean, I think the computer of Dassanaya is the one that is able to do that.
Right.
Not us.
So, because
No, there's nobody from the vihara. No.
well, not from the vihara itself right now. Welcome, Ron. Got a couple of Canadian representatives here. Any trouble getting across the border? All right. Oh, and our furry friends. I love our furry friends. I would open the door and let some of mine in, except I got 4 of them, so it'd be a little overwhelming. All right, looks like we're at almost 20 after, so we will begin. Unfortunately, I can't do anything with the sound, so I'm assuming the sound's okay. You can hear my voice. Is that all right? But I can't do anything with bells. I can't alternate. There's an adjustment used to be on here, but now with a Zoom update, I can no longer find it. Even if I could find it, I'm not the host, so I can't change it. So we tried it a few minutes ago. I have a nice bell here, but you can't hear it at all. So I have to do without bells. So we'll make the best of it. All right. So we'll begin with meditation first, and then some kind of a rambling talk from me, depending on maybe what comes up during meditation or my notes or whatever. And then it might be a little different depending on how things go. I might ask for a little bit of audience participation earlier on, like even during the talk, but we'll see how that goes. Welcome, Casey, Carolyn. All right. Okay, so as I said, unfortunately, I don't have a bell to begin or end the meditation, but let's start by bringing attention to the body. The first foundation of mindfulness. And we can notice the breath in the body. Not the idea of the breath, not our mental picture of the breath, not our concept of the breath, but the breath as it is being experienced in the body. We'll return to the breath in a moment. But I'd also like to establish right up front a sense of safety. And a respectful recollection of the enlightenment of the Buddha. And thinking of a critical point the night of the Buddha's awakening, where self-doubt itself became Mara. And that gnawing sense of unworthiness, not good enough, who do I think I am to be awakened, was present. And the Buddha reached down and touched the earth. And the earth itself, the earth goddess, manifests and defeated the armies of Mara, saying, "You are worthy. He is worthy of awakening." So can we tune in to the earth itself, upholding us, protecting us in safety? Can we hear the echo of the earth goddess? You are worthy. You are worthy. Now returning to the breath. And there's so much in the breath that we take for granted or overlook. Ajahn Chah once said, I believe it was Ajahn Chah, that some people spend their entire lives and don't actually notice a single breath. And for a moment, if we let go of what we think we know of the breath and actually experience the in-breath, again, not our idea or concept of it, not our mental picture of it, but the actual experience. What does that feel like in the body? Rising, expansiveness, softening, relief. You don't notice relief sometime in your own meditation, just hold your breath at the end of an exhalation, not to the point of panic, but it gets a little bit uncomfortable, and then experience the in-breath. Ah, relief. And now the out-breath. Release and letting go. This is not a special breath. This is not, we're not manipulating. This is not to denigrate different breath practices for trauma and things like that. They're quite valuable. I'm just trying to point out that the ordinary breath, just the way it is designed, so to speak, to deliver us back to a state of, physiologically, we would say homeostasis. We might even say equanimity. So what does it feel like when we breathe ease up into the head, into the face and the eyes, and the ears and the nose and the tongue, the caverns of the skull, the brain, the sea surrounding the brain, that shallow but very important fluid. how often or how seldom do we actually feel total ease in our face, in our eyes, in our head? The apex of our nervous system, I suppose. I don't know if that's the right term, but the top anyway, top of the body. And what does ease feel like in the heart space? Relief on the in-breath, release and letting go on the out-breath. And the heart space goes right through to the back. Often ignored part of the body. Ease in the back. Ease in the back of the neck, back of the head, lower back, base of the spine. Breathing ease into the solar plexus. And all of the organs inside the torso. The sides of the body, the sides of the torso. Breathing ease from the neck into the collarbone and across the shoulders, down the arms, into the hands and fingers. Ease in and out of the hara region below the navel and the lower back and base of spine again. And the pelvic floor, pelvic basket. Breathing ease down the upper legs to the knees. And the knees down to the ankles. And including the feet, the toes, and the soles of the feet. Letting gravity take the weight of the body. Letting the skeletal frame maintain the uprightness of the body, or whatever position you need to be in right now. As if there's another kind of gravity, another level of gravity that is always ready to receive all of the stress and tension being held in the body. Letting that just flow down and out of the body. And invite it to be replaced by ease. from the crown of the head to the soles of your feet and beyond. So just in your own time, letting the body lead the way. As teacher friends of mine and Satipanya Insight in Toronto often say that the body schools the mind. The body already knows the way to peace. Ajahn Mun, at a critical point in his practice, said, I take up the Dharma of ease. Follow that path. It's another critical point before the Buddha's awakening, where he had a memory from childhood, a spontaneous entry into samadhi. And so this is a blameless pleasure. A pleasure that can be cultivated, appreciated, amplified, and deepened. Those are my words, not his. And then he said, could this be the way to awakening? And the wisdom voice, his own voice, answered, yes, this is the way to awaken. sense of being held safely by the earth, held in the container of the practice, embraced by the space around you, supported by the awakening of the Buddha. Just gradually reorienting to the particulars of the space that you're in, space behind you, to the left and right, in front of you, above, sounds around you. And then in your own time, opening your eyes and returning to this virtual meditation hall. Apologies that I can't get the bell to work, but we'll work with what we can. So the Buddha said that without complete letting go, I see no safety for sentient beings. That sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Just let go. Just let go. And then as quite a paradox, almost a bit of a koan. So how do you let go into safety if you don't feel safe? There has to be a sense of safety first, right? Or something to be cultivated along the path. And also investigation. We don't know what we don't know. So just saying to someone, well, just stop clinging is fine, except you got to know what you're clinging to before you can let go of it. Stop clinging to it. And that's part of our ignorance, is we don't really realize what we're clinging to. Yeah, Ron, can you settle yourself there? It's just that you're flipping around, kind of distracting. Thanks. Yeah, so until we see where we're clinging and the depths at which we're clinging, all of our conditioning is to identify body as I, me, and mine, the khandhas as I, me, and mine, our senses as I, me, and mine, sense data as I, me, or mine. And I just had a memory of in retreat with Ajahn Suchito, and at some point I said, I don't need my eye. No, I said, I need my eyes to see. I don't need an eye to see. And he nodded. And I said, but that only works, if I'm out back feeding the deer or something, or looking at trees, or But looking on a screen with, I'm not sure how many other people here looking back, the sense of I, the sense of subjectivity, is obviously there. And along with it, all of the, ego triggers, all of the conditioning. So this is not, letting go is not a quick fix. It's a process. It's a gradual process. So I'm just going to refer to a couple of notes here. Yeah, so for quite some time now, this, actually just recently, there's been a confluence of things that I've been working on for decades. Certain things, probably my whole life, just about. And it's about 8 or 9 years ago. So 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with metastatic cancer. But prior to that, we were beginning a retreat, and the guiding teacher is both a teacher and a beloved friend of 30, 35, 40 years, something like that. We were just having tea even before retreat started, and we were just chatting. And I said, I think I'm finally starting to get a handle on a 70-year post-traumatic stress disorder. And he chuckled, and I chuckled, but we both knew that I was being deadly serious. And this ties in with a lot of work I've been doing for years. It ended up being my chaplaincy project that I did at Upaya. And my thesis is that trauma is not a bug. It's built into the program. Right from birth, right through early childhood, right through the teen years, into adulthood. Again, Ajahn Suchito on retreat once said, we are awash in a sea of trauma, most of it unacknowledged and unrecognized. And I don't think he was just talking about because of the present time, politics, economics, and things like that. I think he was talking about that's the way it is. The First Noble Truth, there is dukkha, there is suffering. But as Dhammadippa often says, the word suffering doesn't quite get it because it's like that off-center axle or the hole in the center of an old-fashioned wheel that, the wheel goes around and it's sort of smooth for a while and then clunk, and we experience what? We experience loss, we experience grief, we experience trauma, we experience disappointment, we experience, all of that. I was thinking of the Zen saying that difficulty follows ease, ease follows difficulty, thus the way unfolds. So it's life. And there is a lot of loss and grief and trauma in life. So then, one of the work I've been doing recently, personal work, is I've been kind of taking the Fena Sutta, which some of you are familiar with, dependent origination, my own practice, and investigating like unfinished business. I was going to mention a Zen koan, but I decided not to because it sounds like I teach koans and I don't. But if you're interested, you could look up the koan. Cow passes through the window, horns, body, but its tail doesn't pass through the window. Why can't the tiny tail pass through the window? I'm not going to answer that, but so if you're curious, you can just Google that koan and sit with it for a while. Anyway, at this stage of my life and my physical condition and my age and all of that, I'm not looking for another experience, actually. I've had experiences. The one thing about experiences, they come and they go. They all end. What I'm looking at right now is doing whatever I can to clean up the karmic stream. Because when I catch the midnight train, it's not a me that's going to go on. It's the karmic stream that's going to go on. So I don't want to be dragging around a bunch of rusty old, tin cans and pickup trucks and rotten tires, whatever's in the polluted stream. So as I'm sitting with the Fena Sutta and dependent origination, then I start seeing all of these things, And a few weeks ago, I'm sitting and I'm like, oh yeah, I can get triggered by a sound. I can get triggered by that word, depending on the tone of somebody's voice. I can get triggered by a certain look from somebody, and so on and so on and so on. And I thought, I have more triggers than the National Rifle Association. But if I know them, if I see them coming up, I don't have to squeeze the trigger. But, so there's a second but, I can't do that if I'm outside my window of tolerance. If I don't feel safe, if I feel overwhelmed, then just notice the next time that you're rushing around, feeling under pressure, time pressure, starting to get kind of grumpy and irritated, and see how much more quickly you get triggered by the smallest thing. And for me, that's where the real work is taking place. It's in the nitty-gritty of our moment-to-moment life. The big stuff does happen. We do have potentially big transformations, but they don't always come big. And that's okay. There are different approaches. I'm not sure if this comes from Dogen himself, but certainly in the Soto tradition, when I was in Zen, I worked the tradition of Sambo Kyoden, which is a blend of Rinzai and Soto. So there were both elements there. My understanding of Soto is that, yes, there can be big, kind of explosive awakening experiences, but it also can be a very gradual path. And like there's the image of walking with your robes through fog, through mist. And by the time you have gone a certain distance, you are just as soaked through as if you were in the midst of a downpour. And sometimes being soaked through gradually can actually be healthier. You know, sometimes having a big experience, if you're not actually emotionally ready for it, I won't say it's worse than not having the experience at all, but for the people around you, it might be. And I can say that from some personal experience. My first teacher, Roshi Kapleau, used to say, I don't care how deep your enlightenment experience is, never forget that you are still the same old you. You've still got lots of stuff to work with. And again, so in terms of moment-to-moment practicalities, how do we know when we're being grabbed and pulled out of our natural clarity and ease, which we don't give enough attention to. You know, just the moment when there's, okay, I've finished the dishes, I've done all that. There's nothing to do. I'm just going to be fully present. This is nice, you know. We don't pay attention to that because the mind is like, all right, now what I've got to do? And there's always stuff to do. And that's the nature of samsara. It's never finished. And somehow inside we think, well, I should be finishing this. No, there is no finishing it because there's always going to be something else to do. So just to relax in those rare moments when we've got a break and appreciate that moment of non-becoming. I don't have to become anything else. I don't have to reach into the future. I don't have to sit here with anticipation and dread of what comes next. How can I manage what comes next? How can I control what comes next? Because the fact is, we can't manage or control much of anything other than our input. And if our input is always coming from a place of anxiety or perfectionism or self-loathing, it's not going to be very helpful either for us or for the world or for the people around us. Anyway, just touching back into my first retreat with Ajahn Suchito, which was in Quebec, must have been, well, maybe 8 or 10 years ago now. You get to a certain age, you start losing track of time. And he had been talking for several days about the sankharas, the volitional formations, the mental formations, and how they, moment to moment, create a sense of self. And we could explore this forever. And some of you have done some death and dying workshops with me, have heard bits of this before. Anyway, so I was listening, and this happened to correspond with the thesis that I was working on, which was that selfing is a trauma response. It gets triggered. Things are okay. We are okay, but we don't believe we are. So again, back to those moments where I relax, things are okay. It's like, but I've got to be doing something. Because if I don't do something, I'm not worthy. Which is an old story for most of us. Not worthy, not good enough. So we had a couple of opportunities to meet with the Ajahn privately. So in this one meeting, I said, the way you talk about the sankharas, and this is interesting because the word sankhara literally means gathered togetherness, or the gathering togetherness. So these mental formations that we have, which are conditioned, which arise from belief systems, which we cling to, not even knowing that we cling to them. So something happens and we get triggered into an old story or an old response, and all of our belief systems and perceptions and emotions and biases and the 5 khandhas and the 6 they all come together, glom together, and suddenly we become an angry person, a shamed person, a frightened person. But it doesn't have to happen if we're feeling in a safe space. Anyway, back to the Ajahn. So I said, the way you describe it to me, and I made this kind of motion, it sounds like the gathering together, it feels like a trauma response. So the time I was saying this, I wasn't sure whether the project I was working on, whether I was just taking my own personal stuff and projecting it onto everybody else, universalizing it like everybody has this. And Ajahn said, that's it. He said, selfing is never a decision. It's a reactivity. So the way I've started languaging it, wording it, is that being, with a capital B, and even the word being is fraught, but we have to say something. We have to use language. So what I've been saying is being is naturally open, peaceful, receptive, empathic, spacious, calm. Becoming is solid, heavy, anxious, and I forget the rest. I have a whole bunch of other things on there too, which aren't coming to me at the moment. But trying to make a distinction between, if If I were a Zen teacher, I might say, try to make a distinction between our true nature and our ego. Our true nature is always being. Ego is always in a state of becoming. If that makes any sense. So we often hear teachings about, the past is dead and gone. The past is not here. Don't worry about the past. Leave the past behind. Which is true. It's not untrue. So the past is gone, except when it's not, except when it's present. And the chitta, the heart mind, my understanding is it is timeless. So it is outside of time. Again, I once said to Ajahn Suchito, the way you talk about the chitta sounds to me like the chitta is ancient. His reply was, the chitta is not ancient. It's timeless. It's timeless. It's outside of time and space. Our heart mind, our essential heart mind. But because it is timeless, everything is now for the chitta. So the places that the chitta was wounded, the places that the heart felt squeezed and ashamed and frightened and unworthy, when those triggers come up in the present, the chitta doesn't know the difference. You go right back to, when you were 11 years old, becomes alive again, because 11 years old was when you were shamed and whatever. And that's not in the past, it's here in the present. So then the present comes alive. So maybe as a segue, we're almost at the end of the talk, and as a segue into question and answer and audience participation and so on, do a little thought experiment. I'm always surprised by this when I do this in a workshop or a retreat. So just relax for a minute. And just try to think of your first clear, vivid memory in this lifetime. And take a few moments with it, because the first thing that comes up might not be it. Sometimes the first thing that gets thrown up is a cover for something else. If it happens to be a very difficult, traumatic kind of memory, don't go to the details. Safety first. Just notice, oh yeah, trauma. Okay, don't go to the details. And now, just let me ask you, for how many people is their first clear, vivid memory in this lifetime a pleasant one? Just put your hand up. A pleasant one? We got a couple. Okay, so 3 or 4. 5. Okay. Well, that's more than I usually get. So Sometimes there's like 0. I've done groups where they're not 1. Okay, so that's interesting. So now, if you have had a pleasant memory, again, if there's trauma involved, do not go to the details. So if you've had a pleasant memory, bring up an unpleasant memory. If you've had an unpleasant memory, bring up a pleasant memory. And just take a few minutes for that. Now I'll ask, which memory, and we don't have to answer this, I just want you to sit with the question. Which memory has more emotional charge? And you're going to sit with that question for a long time and explore it. And with those memories, both the positive and the negative, can't you still feel them in your heart now? At least the echo of them, even if feels like there's nothing to resolve. Aren't they still give some aliveness to the present moment, to your sense of being here now? So we'll leave it at that for the time being, and I'll open it up for comments and questions. Hoping there are some. And thank you for your kind attention. All right, so if you can raise your virtual hand and then unmute if you've got any comments or questions this might bring up for you. It takes one brave person to start it. Or about the meditation. Or the meditation, yeah. Comments or questions, but yes, Stig.
There you go. Well, for me, it was an unpleasant memory, and it relates back to childhood period, maybe 4, 5 years old, and I was listening to a conversation in the living room of the apartment that I was living in, where at the time I thought my godfather was talking with my mother. And I was just so surprised that this was the first memory that came up, because I know I've had lots of pleasant memories before, way before that. And then when you asked us to shift to a pleasant memory, I was locked in to that unpleasant memory, and I said, "Wow, what's that about?" So there was an ongoing proliferation around the very question that was being posed, and a dissatisfaction with that. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. We'll have to talk about that next month. Stig and I have a date once a month. We meet for an hour. We keep it to an hour, because if we didn't keep it to an hour, we'd go on for days. But anybody else? Yes, Julia. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm somewhat puzzled. My earliest memories, logically, there are 2 of them, had to have been terribly traumatic, but I have no feelings associated with them. However, when you said, what's your earliest pleasant memory? There's a great deal of feeling. Now, that kind of puzzles me because I suspect that the occurrences of those two early ones reside in a very traumatic way, because I can't believe that the things that happened could not be traumatic. But the pleasant memory, I feel very secure and happy and pleased, and I feel that emotion. Now,
And that, yeah, and that's where you need to stay, in that safety, until the body is ready, the body and mind are ready to release the others. You know,
I'm
so
lucky. Okay.
yeah, it's not something you go and dive into. You know, the you know the responses to trauma of freeze, flee, fight, flight, fight, and freeze. Freeze can be the most problematic, and yet it is exactly the protection that the body mind needs at the time. So there's a psychologist, Harvey Schwartz, specializes in trauma, and he says, in trauma, the mind flees its subjectivity in order to evacuate its pain. So the mind actually moves away from the body, which is the center of what is experiencing the trauma, and freezes. So there's this dissociation, and the memory in the body gets protectively frozen. But it still has impact. And we don't even want to go there until we're ready. It's not something that you want to force. When I was training at Upaya, we used to do a lot of bearing witness practice, where we would sit in dyads, two people together, and we would explore in relationship very difficult stuff. And one of the persons that I was paired with one time, she said she has absolutely no memory prior to the age 8. None whatsoever. Total blank. But she knows intuitively that it's horrible. So that's the body-mind system in great wisdom and compassion, protecting us, protecting ourselves. Now, I think of, well, this winter has been an exception because we've been like the coldest winter in decades. But when I was a kid, winters like this were common. We used to often get frostbite in Canada. And I don't know if this is actually true. I keep wanting to look it up and then I forget again. But you can't thaw out frostbite quickly. If you do, you actually kill the skin cells. I believe that's true, but I'm not. So, like to have frostbite and then go and put hot water on it is not a good idea. I remember having my cheeks frostbitten, and what would happen is we would take ice cubes, put them in a cloth, and place them on like for 5 minutes, take it off. And that's how you thought it out. Now, whether that's old wives' tale or true or not, that's what we used to do. And that's an image that reoccurs for me when I think about trauma. You can't just go and try to thaw it out quickly. It's a very, I've heard from some Theravada teachers the phrase, just this much. You know, being careful, being mindful, being self-compassionate enough to touch our pain just this much, just this much. When we touch it just this much, we've now built a slightly wider window of tolerance. The next time it comes up, okay, that didn't kill me, it wasn't pleasant, but I'm going to touch it again. A little bit more, a little bit more. A gradual thawing, not throwing yourself into boiling water, you know. So anybody else got? Yes, Carolyn.
Thanks. I still haven't learned how to raise that hand thing. But luckily this works. That was a gorgeous talk. Thank you so much. I just loved it. And I'm sorry I won't be around next week, but I'm glad you're recording, so I'll be able to watch the others.
I hope we're recording. If it turns out this is not recording, we're in big trouble.
It says recording up there in the corner, so
That's good. Okay.
that's a good sign.
Okay.
So I was just so with you with the selfing as a trauma response. It gets triggered and it's never a decision, it's reactivity.
Reactivity. Yeah.
I think that's just, I could contemplate that for a long time. It's a deep perspective. But where I have the question, and I probably got triggered here, was where you were describing the chitta as selfless and outside of time and space, which I think I identify as something like big mind or something transcendent. But then you said the chitta is, injured in childhood and carrying that injury. And so then I just got all confused about what is it, my personal limited self, or is it the bigger awareness that we access when we're
So
awake?
I don't have my full restated thesis in front of me, but what I've been kind of saying recently is we assume that it was our self that was wounded back then. But it was actually the heart, the chitta, that got bruised or squeezed or bent out of shape. Our self is our response to that. Our self, we constructed, and it's not all bad. I mean, our conditioned sense of self right now certainly has, I hope, some good stuff. But it also is wrapped around all the places we were hurt, all the places we felt shamed, unworthy, not good enough, have to be something else, Probably a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, during the Sunday morning, and I don't recall the talk or the guidance, But at the end, I shared a little bit of an experience I had when I was doing some grief and trauma training about 20 some odd years ago. And because I had a full-time job, also these trainings were like weekend intensives for a couple of years. And the trainer, she was the real deal, and she wasn't going to certify anybody who wasn't willing to do their own work. So we got put through a ringer, an emotional ringer. And so one, I guess it was midway through. So I got home on the Saturday evening and I was just spent. Had some dinner and I sat down to meditate. And so good meditation does drop deep fairly quickly, and not really a meditation object, just kind of letting whatever is there be there. Very, very silent. And then I could feel this kind of bubbling at the bottom of consciousness, at the seat of consciousness or something. And suddenly this phrase came up, and the phrase was, if only I was someone else, then I'd be happy. And I went, what? What? This is after 30 years of Zen practice. If only I were someone else, then I'd be happy. And I thought, oh my God, that voice is still there, And now the curious thing is that at the time, that particular weekend, we were looking at, because it was an Adlerian school, we were looking at Adler's work, which is fundamentally, he sees the fundamental psychological problem of all human beings is low self-esteem. Then on the other side, we were looking at a lot of self-psychology and perfectionism. And I went, oh my God, the ego is a perfectionist with low self-esteem. No wonder we're screwed at the conditioned level, You can't fix that. Somehow we got to get beyond that. How can you possibly be a perfectionist with low self-esteem? And so the next day when we were working on the Sunday, I told all the other therapists in training, when we graduate, I'm getting us all T-shirts that just say perfectionist with low self-esteem on it. Anyway, so I'm about to do some work with Amatanasati, who, should listen to some of her talks on when meditation is not enough. And she spent 26 years in robes, 26 years in robes, I think, as a Theravada nun, and then left. And she's been doing a lot of, attachment repair work ever since. And it's important to, like the trauma saying goes something like, if something to the effect of, if we don't heal what hurt us, we will put our hurt all over everybody else, something to that effect. So any other questions or comments? Sorry, yes, Evelyn, yeah.
You have enough time?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, there's still time,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I was reflecting on your remark about not needing more experiences, but focusing on, I think you said cleaning or clearing the karmic stream. And it
Yeah.
seems like what you're talking about doing that means reflecting on the trauma work that you're talking about is your idea for that's what you're saying is clearing the karmic stream. That
Well, it, whatever is there, it's not all necessarily trauma work. So sometimes it's just grief around loss, unacknowledged loss that we're still carrying with us. Well,
mm,
that can be traumatic too. I mean, there's a lot of crossovers. Um, so, I mean, I'll share another story from an experience I had a number of years ago. And we were, by we, at the time was I living in Toronto or London then? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Um, I was associated with Satipanya Insight Sangha in Toronto, and we had rented uh, the Chapin Mills Retreat Center, which belongs to the Rochester Zen Center. Beautiful center to do any kind of retreat work in. It was built for that purpose. Anyway, so we were going down to do, I think it was a 10-day retreat. And then a couple of weeks before the retreat, the guiding teachers sent me a note saying, because we go back a long way, all of us had been in Zen for a long time and then switched to Theravada. And so they said, hey, we're going down a couple of days early just to do solitary retreat work. You want to join us? And a few other people were going as well. And I said, absolutely. So we went down. So before the rest of the retreatants arrived, there would end up being about 40 some odd people on the retreat. But I think there were about 10 of us. Spent a couple of days on our own schedules. You could sit as long as you want or just go for a walk or whatever. No fixed schedule. And the only agreement was we would meet at certain times for dinner, for a meal. So one of these days, I found myself sitting in, I think the Zendo seats, probably 70 on the Zabutons, I think. Yeah. But then if you could easily get 100 people in there, I think, with chairs and stuff, although I don't know if it's fire coded for that. But anyway, so I'm sitting by myself in this huge, gorgeous senda with a Buddha bigger than life size. And it's kind of mid-afternoon. And again, I don't really have a specific meditation object. I'm just sitting, seeing what's coming up. Very nice sitting. And after about 20 minutes or so, again, I could feel a stirring deep in the unconscious. And then all of a sudden, in my mind's eye, very vividly, it was like balloons floating to the surface. And in my mind's eye, there were 3 spheres, different colors. And they were kind of flowing around one another. And one would be in the center, and then the 2 would rotate around that, and then they would change shapes. And I go, oh, this is pretty cool. And I'm just watching. And then somehow intuitively I realize, oh, one of those spheres is fear. Oh, that one is unworthiness. Oh, that one is shame. Interesting. And then all of a sudden I go, what? That's me. That's the embodied me sense of conditioning. At the core is the shame, unworthiness, fear, the old unresolved stuff that ego carries until it doesn't carry it anymore. But I think ultimately when ego doesn't carry it anymore, there's no ego, because that's what ego is built out of, mostly. I mean, we need a subjective sense of self, obviously. You go mad without one. But it doesn't have to be so tortured. So.
Would you spell out the name of that teacher, Amatamasanti, did you say? I don't know how to look for that.
Yeah, so AMMA is her first name. Tanasati is, I believe it's THANASATI. There might be an H after the T, but you just Google her name and yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? So there's a few minutes. I will read something and then I'll try to put a positive spin on it. But this is from Donald Winnicott, who was very foundational and influential in developmental psychology, a lot of connections to attachment theory, that kind of thing. He was a British pediatrician and psychoanalyst. That's quite a blend. Yeah, so very, very influential for anybody working in child psychology and developmental psychology. So here's something that he says that it's important to keep in mind. He says, in the early stages of emotional development, before the senses have been organized, before there is even something that could be called an autonomous ego, very severe anxieties are experienced. In fact, the word anxiety is of no use. The order of infant distress at this stage being of the same order as that which lies behind panic, and panic is already a defense against the agony that makes some people commit suicide rather than remember. So he's not talking about abused children here. He's talking about the ordinary existential built into the system of being an embodied being experiences that an infant and a young child can go through before they even have language. Medical interventions, earaches, colic, hunger, a sense of abandonment. All of these things can get right into the nervous system. Lower than language, deeper than the conscious intellect can reach. So those energies can already be there. Not that we necessarily need to go back and remember every event that we've ever experienced, and thank goodness, because it would take us another 10 lifetimes to do that. And some of it's impossible to reach consciously. But what we can do is come back to safety, bathing the body with healing breath. And that eventually can release the energies and the meanings that we've given to those energies, which are, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with being in the world. I am broken. I am a misfit. I don't belong here. That kind of stuff. So, folks, I think we've come to the end. So my plan for next week is to do something lighter, like maybe death anxiety. We'll have a look at that. Might as well get your money's worth. So, Stig, could you just say a little something about Donna?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, first, thank you so much, Brad, for leading this session, sharing so much of your own experience and relating to people. But we do this in the spirit of our community, and we have a recognition of the preciousness of our community, the teachings we learn from each other. Ayadamadeepa, our guiding teacher, and all of our Sangha contributing to our process of awakening. But we make this process survive through making donations. We need that to keep our community functional, despite all the good hard efforts of everybody. So deep bows to our Sangha, Dassanaya, and I recommend strongly to consider the spirit of generosity being the great perfection that can combat greed. So thank you again for all being here. Thank you, Brad. And it was a real remarkable time together this morning. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll just do a little kind of return of merit. May the field of merit created here today extend in all directions. May all beings be healed of all manner of suffering. May all of us together take up the causes and conditions that create peace and happiness and abandon the causes and conditions that create suffering. May all beings be at ease. May all beings receive the blessings of my life. Thank you all for a great morning. Be well. See you soon. Bye-bye.
I found the link for Amatanasanti I put in the chat if people are interested in that.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Brad, just
Yes.
one more thing. Do you think we can contact somebody from Dassanaya so I can get, because I was like, exploring here, and I had the option to like write down the key, the password of Dassanaya, and then I can be a host. So
Yeah.
do you think we can contact somebody and maybe they can give us the password or something?
Yeah, I think, see, Dana was planning on being here today, but she couldn't be here today. She was with family and then returning. So, but she sent me a note last night saying, I assume you have the code for being a host. And no, I don't.
Okay.
So, I think she's probably the one that
Okay.
for me to contact first. So I'll send her an email. Does she have your email address?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
But if she gives you the code, then you can be a host, and then you can put me in the translation.
Oh, for next week. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, somehow or other, we'll try to get it straightened out before next week.
Okay.